There it is. Welcome to another episode of Two Cops, One Donut.
That's correct, sir.
That's amazing.
It is. I know. I love it, right?
I'm like geeking out over here. So.
I know. She can't hear it because she doesn't have her headphones on right now. But yeah, we just wanted to hear the intro music.
Awesome.
So I guess they kind of give us a cue of what's going on.
Right. Okay.
I like it.
So, like Zentino said, hey, and if you're all wondering, yeah, that's Zentino. I know you forgot about him. So
Hi.
he's back. I finally got him over here.
Sorry.
And for a good cause.
Yeah.
He heard who the guest was going to be, and he was like,
I had to be
I got to
here.
make sure I get there.
Yeah, I even
So-
shaved.
You did shave. I didn't, and I need a haircut.
Yeah.
I'm wearing shorts because this room is. I have so many people in my house right now.
I think he's nervous.
I think he's nervous too.
I even fixed my hair.
I won't bite.
So
I know. I'm used to you. You don't bother me.
it's me.
It's
the,
you.
it's
He's
me. I'm
making
the one
nervous.
that
It's the
bothers me.
technical, all the technical stuff, trying to get in line because I don't want to ruin the episode. So
But you know what? He's gotten better at it.
I'm getting better. So
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
that's
There
right.
you go.
So I'm gonna change pace real quick. First off, I'm gonna go through our sponsor because we have one sponsor, and that's HRH Combat Arms, a retired police officer from a department that I won't name because we're trying to keep that separate.
Yeah.
But I worked very closely with, and he's also a retired military guy. So his name is Sergeant Paul Ware, and he owns HRH Combat Arms, and he does Cerakoting for your firearms, gunsmithing needs, automotive parts, tools, anything like that. He and his business partner, Steve Miller, who's also a military veteran, so you got a military small-owned business. I like supporting that stuff. He's done great gun work for me. He's located at 5025 Saunders 103 in Fort Worth, 76119. And if you want to call him, you can call him at 682-304-0363. And his website is www.hrhcombatarms.com.
Thank you, sir.
We got that out of the way.
Yeah.
So
Everybody needs
he's
a good
behind the
gunsmith.
fancy.
everybody needs a good gunsmith.
Yeah.
So that's a good transition.
Yeah.
Talking about guns, all right?
We just remodeled a house, and my husband had to put a whole workshop for our guns in his
Okay.
Oh,
house.
nice.
So he
So
can. So I don't have to clean mine anymore. I just make him do it.
I got
There
you.
you go.
So we got the queen of Cowtown here.
Yeah.
So I had to put my cowboy hat on.
There you go.
For those that don't know, this is Mayor Betsy Price of Fort Worth in Texas. I called her up, said, hey, I'm doing a show trying to bridge the gap between the community and police. And she's like, I would love to be a part of it because she's done that her whole career that I've seen. I've been,
It didn't surprise me with that
Yeah.
response. So
yeah,
Guys are great.
I've worked around her for quite a while. I won't say where, but I worked around
I've
her.
had the opportunity to as well.
Yeah,
So,
weird.
Yeah.
So she's been great. She's always been helpful when it comes to police and bike riding and making that particular city better for being bike friendly.
There you go.
Which is something I'm really into. But that's my part on Miss Betsy here. But I'll let her give her resume, tell us where she's been, where she's grown, and how she got to the position she's in. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
This is fun.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is.
fun.
Two cops and a donut. I love
Yeah.
that.
That's
You
right.
should say two cops and a power ring.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
We could.
Yeah.
It's power rings.
Right?
Yeah.
Yesterday was National Donut Day.
I know we ate one in honor.
I took part.
I try to stay away from donuts because they make the bike riding way too hard. But
Right.
you got to eat one on National
Oh,
Donut
yeah.
Day. The hat's great, by the
That
way.
is great. I just want to make sure technically we're sounding good.
We still good?
We're still good.
All right.
And
So,
yep. So Mayor,
sure.
how long have you been a mayor?
10 years.
10 years.
Longest serving mayor Fort Worth's ever had.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
did trivia for you.
What number was she?
She's 44. I almost wore a shirt today, the 44 on it, but
Huh.
couldn't
appreciate
find one.
that.
Yeah. So
Nice. I didn't know
Yeah.
that either.
Yeah.
So,
How many? What woman? Number woman.
ooh, number one.
in my heart,
Thank you.
The
Number
only
two.
number two. There was a
Number two.
there was a
Kay
number
Granger
two.
was first.
Kate
Yeah.
Granger. Okay. So you weren't a mayor before that.
No, I was
How
the
did you-
tax assessor.
Okay. So kind of walk us down your career path. How did it get started to all of a sudden you're the mayor?
Oh gosh, I mean, been in Fort Worth all my life. I was born here, and I've always been involved in the community from volunteer activities, and we had 3 kids, and I was PTA, junior league, Sunday school, campfire, Boy Scouts, whatever you needed, we did it. Came from a family that said you got to serve your community, you got to do something. And in the interim, I had a business of my own. I had a company called Price Cornelius Title Service, and we did licensing, titling, and property tax work for the car dealers in town.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah, you
nice.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's what I
yeah.
did for 17 years or better. And we worked with the tax office, and the tax office was absolutely despicably run. It was the worst managed office. I mean, you'd go in and you'd wait an hour or two for a simple transaction, and it just drove me crazy. And I was always saying to my clients, to my dealers, this office drives me crazy. Somebody ought to fix it.
So you were the change.
And finally, one day,
There you
when I
go.
was said, well, stop talking about it, that somebody needs to fix it is you.
Okay.
So I
That's
fixed
awesome.
it, and when I took office there in 2000, the average wait time was about 45 minutes. And when I left in 2010, 2011, the average wait time was less than 10 minutes.
Nice.
And we cut the budget by almost $1 million, and made the efficiency and added a bunch of services, and kind of got the reputation for being a fixer. And then I got drafted to run for mayor. I mean, be careful what you say, what you do.
Right.
It comes back to get you sometimes.
Okay. So
People said, look, you fix the tax office, you got to go fix the budget at the city. The city budget's a mess. The city the connection with some of our departments are bad, and the city isn't moving along on technology. And you can do that, because that was what we did at the tax office.
Okay.
Was change the technology. We were world recognized, and not to brag, but we were. We got all kinds of awards, and I spoke all over the country and Canada on electronic service and government.
Okay.
So I got recruited, and I said, I don't think so. I'm not going to run for that. It's a total different beast. The tax office is largely administrative, and you have, 6 offices and 180 people working for you, and a nice salary. County officials make a nice salary because they're considered full-time officials. But people kept saying, you need to do this. Moncrief's going to retire, and you need to run. You're the one we need. You're a Fort Worth girl, and we need the service, and you can fix this. And you're passionate about Fort Worth. My family said, no way. Mayor's 24/7,
Right.
So for 6 months, we said no. And finally, one day, Tom said, we really need to talk to our minister about this. And we went to see him. And before I could even tell him what I was doing, he said, there's a door open for you, Betsy, and you need to step through it. And then he laughed later, 2 or 3 years later, and said, well, I was thinking to myself, there's a door open. I don't know who opened it, but she'll tell me what the temperature is on the other side, and we'll know who opened it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, I came back and said yes, and a group of business people said, well, we'll help you raise your money and campaign. And I was successful in a field of 5 against 2 former council people and 2 unknowns, and rest is history, as they say.
And here we are.
10 years.
Okay.
5 races.
Okay. So I'm glad one, I never knew that becoming a mayor was a recruitment type thing.
It's not always, but oftentimes it is.
Okay. And the people that chose you, obviously were in a place to be like, they're not going to expect,
anyone.
they're not going to
Right.
expect you to raise that type of funding and stuff for a campaign on your own. They already have this stuff set in mind. So behind the scenes in that, are they going to these backers and saying like, this is the person I have in mind?
No, not really. I mean,
No?
they just know they want good leadership, and if they can get somebody to step up, then then it's on your back, or in this case, it's on my back to get the voters to agree and to raise the money. I mean, I raised $850,000 that first campaign.
Wow.
And it's just gotten progressively more expensive
Yeah.
since then. And my first backers probably were good for $100,000.
Wow.
They put that together, but they can help you open doors. But having been tax assessor and been involved in the community, I mean, I'll give you an example. The first consultant I went to said, I don't think you can do this. You don't have the political ID to do this. This was when I ran for tax assessor the first time, and I said, yeah, we do. Just hide and watch. He said, you haven't been involved in politics. I said, doesn't matter. I've got great community support. And after we won in the tax assessor's race, the first one was a field of 7 people. And after we won, he said, I've never seen anything like it. The grassroots support said your carpool friends, your junior league friends, your Cowtown running buddies, your Boy Scouts that were in your groups, you know, they were all out there working for you. And when I ran for mayor, that's what we did again. And when I was first elected, we were walking downtown one day and my detail was with us and we saw a bunch of my kids' friends and they all came over and were hugging me and saying, hey, Mom, hey, Mom. And one of my guys that I didn't know very well at the time said, so how many kids do you really have, Betsy? Everybody in this town calls you Mom.
Right.
I said, well, a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a grassroots effort. I mean, good leaders develop a connection in the community and build it.
Okay.
And I never meant to get into public service. It just, for me, it's not politics, so it's service. It's got to be
Just kind of
about-
came naturally to you
just
with
kinda
that.
came
Yeah,
natural.
good deal.
It's just about serving the community.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I never, like I said, I don't have, that's why I got somebody like her in here. I don't have the experience for that stuff. So
Nor do I.
I thought if I wanted to be a mayor, I'm like, throw my hat in the ring. Now I'm in.
See how many votes I
Well,
get.
you
right?
can.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got good community support, certainly that's as
Right.
good as any.
But it's just interesting to me to hear that like people actually reached out to you and were like, we want you to do this. And it's good that people do that because they're recognizing something that we don't recognize in ourselves sometimes. So the fact that they saw the leadership skills and then probably more importantly the quality of work for what you were doing beforehand to try to help fix the other problems that relate. So
I was gonna say it's not bragging if the proof is in the pudding. You know
That's
what I mean?
true.
That's
it's
true.
not. So
That's true.
it's
yeah. So okay. So you make mayor. Now this show's geared towards frontline workers.
Sure.
And I'm gonna direct it towards police because right now the police are always, I don't want to say they're always a hot button topic, but
Well, it is right,
Right
now. It's a
now,
hot button topic for
it
sure.
is. So
Shouldn't be, but it is.
So with that, you're coming into a city that I don't know at the time, because I wasn't around the area. I was still up in Michigan. And did you have police backing at the time? Did you have?
I did not because my opponent, probably the other strongest candidate in the race was police attorney
Okay.
Jim Lane. I mean, it's common who it was.
Jim Lane was the one you
Jim
went up
Lane
against?
was my opponent. Kathy Hurd, who'd been on council, was it. With other than 3 that were strong, and then Jim was police and fire's candidate.
Okay. So
there you go.
I didn't plan on talking about this aspect of that.
That's all right.
As you become the mayor and you're like, is that something you like have in the back of your head? Like, oh, these guys didn't back me up.
No, you never hold a grudge. I mean,
Okay.
I assume some candidates do, but I wouldn't. I mean, you've got to. I got the majority of the votes, but I have to serve everybody in the city,
Right.
no matter whether you're police, fire, whether you're a frontline worker or garbage collector, or if you don't work.
Yeah.
My job is to serve everybody.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? When we go to court and, as an officer, you're more than likely on the prosecution's side. Like, I mean, you're there to tell the facts, but your case is what's helping them, vice versa. And you go there and you see a prosecutor and a defense attorney go at it in the courtroom. Just go at it. I mean, trying to make each other just look terrible.
Right.
And then as soon as the court case is over, your court's adjourned that day, like, hey, Frank, you want to get a beer? Like, yeah, man, good
Well,
work today.
It wasn't quite that friendly.
It wasn't quite that friendly?
No, I mean, they told me when I first signed up to run, I had lunch with Fire's union representative and POA's rep, and they said, you won't win. We've never been beat, and we won't be beat this time. And I said, well, you will. I'm sorry to say, but you will.
Love it.
That's from the
confidence.
That's from from FD.
Yeah, and police. I mean, I had
okay.
with both of them, and they just couldn't understand how that was going to happen. I said, well, I've got a great grassroots campaign. I've got a very successful track record, and city budget needs fixing, and the pension needs fixing.
Okay.
You walked in and owned the place, basically.
That was what, I mean, the deal was, the big defining difference was whether we would touch the pension and whether it would be stabilized or not.
Okay.
They at the time didn't want, the 2 leaders at the time didn't want it touched. and we knew full well, and the community knew that it was going to break the city, and it had to be there for you guys, you younger guys, and for those who were retiring had to have a pension.
Yeah.
And city was going to go under, or the pension was one, if we didn't do something about it.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to make changes, but it had to be changed. And now it's, as you know, it's very stable pension, among the strongest, most stable in the state.
Okay. Don't want to run into like how Dallas ran into their problems.
No.
Yeah. Okay. I won't pretend to know the numbers because
Not at all.
I'm a dummy.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't pretty.
Okay.
And suffice to say that it wasn't just the pension. I mean, the city's budget was $50 million underwater the year I was sworn in.
Yikes.
They were coming off of a big recession, but they just had a spin, and we just had to say, okay, let's get reasonable, let's right-size thing, and let's right-size our spending, and let's stabilize our pension.
Okay.
And we did it, and, I mean, ultimately, police and fire came around and said, you're right, this is the right thing to do.
Okay.
Good deal.
And the general employee said it's the right thing to do, and I get along with everybody great now, and have had police backing and fire's backing the last 4 elections.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, you know how cops are. They don't like change very much. So
But most people don't.
Most
Yeah.
people don't.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
we've talked about that
Yeah, we
several
have.
times with his cutting a cheese and
Oh, yeah.
what are those weird books
who,
you
who moved my cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese, one of my favorite books.
the hell?
I always make my staff read Who Moved My Cheese.
That's so funny.
It's a great,
And
it's a
give-
great little book about change.
Yep.
When I was elected tax assessor, it's one of the first things I did for my
I wasn't lying.
department heads was say, everybody's going to read Who Moved My Cheese. And
right.
then we're going to have a bigger understanding for what we're going to do here.
And the second one
And then
was
the-
give them the pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still think that
My other-
sounds like a sexual assault. So.
No. it's actually a book.
It is a book,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
My
do
other
read,
favorite
sir.
place is just don't tell them no. I don't like people to tell me no. I always say, don't just tell me no, or don't say, no, we don't do it that way. Tell me how we can do it and how we can
how
make
we
it
can.
happen.
I hate-
I've been known to say, if you tell me no one more time, don't let the door hit you on the backside.
I always hated, well, that's how we've always done it.
Oh, I hate that.
I'm like, so you're telling me you're incapable of change. So,
The world changes whether you do or not.
Yeah.
all right, Mayor. So,
Okay.
little recap. You were recruited to be a mayor, in a sense. You get in, you see police, you see a very unfriendly budget towards not just police, but the city in general. And that's your bread and butter as far as your job set anyway, is
Well,
balancing.
to go a little further on that just real quick,
Okay.
the city had the highest tax rate of any major city in the state, and not by just a little bit, but by a lot. And it was killing us on economic development, just literally killing us on business recruitment.
Okay.
And so it was a double-edged sword to lower the tax rate and get the budget stable and the pension stable. And we were able to lower the tax rate 12 cents in the last 10 years.
Nice.
Substantial.
Okay.
That is much more competitive for business recruitment. Hence a lot of the growth that we've had.
That's what I was about to say. I had sure just
But you
blowing
were
up
going to
over
say
here.
something, and I derailed you.
Oh, you're okay. I was just recapping where we were at so far. And so you come in and your plan coming in the door was like, okay, I got to get this budget fixed. And police and fire they're in the way of that. I'm sure there were other things as well, but this is a law enforcement show in a sense, so we'll go that way. So you get that fixed. What else did you see?
We didn't cut police and fire's budget. In fact, the first year we increased their budget several $100,000. But we cut some other departments, and we had to make some changes on what the increasing rate on the budget and just stabilize it.
Okay.
What we did have to cut was some of the pension.
Pension stuff. Gotcha. So once you get past the pension stuff, how long did that take? That all happened within your first year, apparently, correct?
Yeah, the first year we made, no, actually probably 2 years. We made the first really hard vote on the pension nearly 2 years in. And it was, we laughed and said that night, it was David Cook, our city manager's first night.
Okay.
And we had some really tough items on our agenda. And we probably had major pushback from our 2 unions, from police and fire. We probably had 50 or 60 officers and firefighters or more there
Yeah.
in the chamber. And when we got home that night, my husband had been watching it on cable, and he said, Well, you darn sure better hope we don't have a fire because nobody's coming. And you better hope that you don't speed tomorrow because you'll sure get a ticket.
Oh, no.
They'll be watching you. And I just said, Tom, they'll come around. They will understand that this is really not, it's isn't about me. This is about the city's health, and it's about whether we can enlarge our police department. And we've added several hundred officers in the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
That department,
Including me.
That department still needs more.
Yeah, you'll get more.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm imagining it takes you some time when you get seated to settle back and really start getting a grasp of, I mean, you knew what you were coming in for, but there's other things involved. So you get in. What was your overall impression that first year with how the city police that you had to deal with, how they were doing their job? Was there any complaints? I mean, yes, the pension stuff, that involves...
That's more internal.
That's internal.
That's not whether that's not our officers facing the public and
right.
the perception of the public.
But the citizens and the people that you got to take care of, how was the vibe there?
Fort Worth's a very pro-policing city and always has been. And I never had any complaints and rarely heard, I mean, just almost never heard complaints about the officers on the street.
Yeah, I've
Few
always
years,
said
that's
that. Yeah.
really happened with the movement on the national level the last probably 2 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm glad you brought that up. With that, what does somebody like you as the mayor, because you have a very influential part in that, like you can make or break the heartbeat of the city based on the words that you come out and say. So with that going across the national level and you knowing that your city doesn't fit that narrative, or at least that's what you're telling me, doesn't fit that narrative, how do you balance that? How do you avoid becoming the next like problems they're having up like in Minnesota?
Well, you have to hope you have a good leader in the police department, and you have to hope that people are indeed open to change. And I know everybody gets sick of, going to classes for certification and all of that, but you've got to have reasonable people working, and the recruitment is a critical piece of that. And I think for me, it's an easy sell. I mean, when people say, "What about police?" I go, "We don't have those problems." You got to have an open door with communication. The city manager and his operation and the chief have to be doing their job for all of y'all, and they have to report back to us. And we've been very fortunate to have good leadership there. That our first really big. Do we have problems? Sure. You guys know we do. I mean, there isn't a city around that doesn't have some problems.
Right.
And there's, going to be racial issues for a while to come because the really low hanging fruit is done.
Yeah.
Talking to the community, seeing where they stand, really race and cultural task force, a lot of those things have been done. Now, implementing that and getting better understanding between the two groups is the hardest work yet to come. And we hired Kim Neal, our police monitor, to help us with that, and Christina Brooks to do diversity and inclusion for us. I would stack Fort Worth's response up on this, and the training we've done and what we're doing. Chief Krause is smart enough to bring in some of the former people in the streets. I mean, some former criminals that consult with him, and Chief Noakes has continued that. You've got to bridge that gap. And our officers know that, and we have to have more officers on the street in the community.
Okay.
And that's really what this is about. You got to have good recruitment, and you got to have good training, and you got to get them on the front line.
Yep.
That's what I've always said. I was like, this city loves their officers. Like, I've never felt anything different.
No.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are pockets that you'll
Right.
go. I mean, if something happens, there's always a few hotheads. Some of the protests that we had last year and some of the things that happened were not Fort Worthians. They were mostly brought in. I mean, I
They
had
were
protesters.
yeah, they were. I was being informed at the time that I was like, I'm watching all these people get off this bus.
Some of them were Fort Worth. I mean, I talked to people, and we tried to understand, and they tried to work with them who are Fort Worth people, especially after the tragic shooting of the Tatiana Jefferson. Temperatures were raw, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and that is nothing. I mean, there's no way to explain that except it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
It was
Definitely.
fatal. It was a fatal mistake,
Yep.
and it could happen
Yeah.
again. And you certainly hope it doesn't, but it could.
Right.
And it could have happened.
And it's happened before.
Yeah, it's happened before.
It's not a new instance.
And it isn't racial in most cases. It's
correct.
It's a situation that people find themselves in.
Right.
It's, sometimes there's bad officers, like they're just bad mayors and council people.
Right.
But you hope that sorts itself out.
Yeah. And that's the big, in my experience, people that are, I don't want to say anti-police, but they're very vocal about keeping police in check, and as they should be. And they'll say, Levine, I'm tired of hearing that there's some bad apples. What are you doing about the bad apples? And I said, this is where everything is subjective. And when you look at it in, let's say, Fort Worth, I've said this before, cops are fired or charged with some sort of crime almost every year. Mm-hmm. Not that means that they're all bad. It's just they're policing their own. Yeah. And you don't hear about that because it's not sexy. No. It's not, the media doesn't want to cover that. They want to cover the cop that somebody was trying to cover up for. Yeah.
So, and right or wrong, 20 years ago, before y'all were cops, there really was a lot of just, okay, we won't do anything with him at this time.
Right.
Now that's not the way it runs. And I think there's still that undercurrent whisper in the community. They're covering it up.
It's an old
and
stigma.
Not.
Right.
I mean, it's all open and transparent. And unfortunately, we have officers lose their jobs every year.
Yeah.
And we have several court cases right now of officers who may very well end up with big judgments against them.
Yeah. And the important thing to note on that is that people are being held accountable.
Yep.
Yes.
I think that's
definitely
it. And I agree with that. You should be held accountable. I am in no part of that decision-making process. But
the nation as a whole that's the thing right now. No matter whether you're cops, whether you're mayors, accountability went out the door for a while, and it's back. Now people are being held accountable.
Yeah.
But I think that's what made the relations so hard, as people thought, particularly in some of these northern states. And it just... My assumption is from talking to them that there wasn't much accountability.
Okay.
I think you've always seen a lot more here than you do there.
Yeah. So with you as a mayor, what is your role for police? Like, does the chief call you daily, like, hey, this is what's going on now? Or do you get a report from the city manager?
The chief reports to the city manager. Fort Worth's the city manager style of government. The mayor's job is to be the face of the city and to set policy. That's the mayor and the council together. And to hold the city manager accountable.
Okay.
But clearly, that's the way it works. But you also have a real close connection with the police chief. I talk to Chief Noakes every week, several times a week.
Okay.
Nothing goes on that I don't get a heads up on.
Right.
And generally, sometimes it comes from David Cook, the city manager, or Jay Chapa, who's over police. Okay. But more often than not, it comes from Neil.
Okay. So there's an open channel of communication.
Yeah.
Even though
because people, not to interrupt you, but
fine.
The public, it isn't the city manager they want to hear from something goes wrong. They want to hear from the mayor.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
The mayor is the face of the city, and they want to hear from the mayor. They want to see that you're there.
So you're the NPO for the city.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a good description. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. She's the NPO. So for those that maybe this is the first episode you've seen, NPO is a neighborhood patrol officer. They're the management between the city and the police department. It's an actual officer. Mr. Zentino here.
Civilians.
That's
what is it? The one thing I remembered from Academy, the bridge, the
bridge the gap. Yeah.
Bridge the gap. Civilians and police officers. So
yeah. So when you're sitting at your house and you're like, I need to get a hold of the officer. Like, there should be an officer in your mind that works your area, and that's your NPO in like the city of Fort Worth. They have that. The old department that I worked up in Michigan, they didn't have that. They didn't have NPOs because it was a small department. Every officer was an NPO for their area. So that's the difference for that. And the way you described the mayor, that sounds exactly like what your job is kind of going back and forth with that.
No matter whether you go to the beauty shop or whether you go to the grocery store or church, somebody's going to ask you something.
Okay. So you got in, you were down. You liked the way that your police were perceived, and you liked the way your police were running things. That's awesome. So with that, what is a mayor's role when it comes to hiring and firing of police? Do they have a role in that at all?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okay.
The city manager is responsible for the hiring and firing. The mayor and council only hire the city manager, city secretary, the auditor, and city attorney.
Okay.
They only have 4 direct reports.
Now,
When you hire a police chief,
yes,
clearly
that's what I was going to get to.
city manager is going to do work the process, narrow that down to 4 or 5 candidates, and then bring them in for the community. Councils and mayor are going to get to interview them, get to meet with them one-on-one. Public gets to see them at a forum always. We can voice our opinion and make recommendations back, but ultimately it's the city manager's job.
Okay.
Nice.
I was always wondering about that. So you basically, you have a voice in it,
Yeah.
and you get to form an educated opinion on it.
But if Mr. Cook came in and said, if I said I like candidate A, and David came in and said, that's not who we're hiring, it's candidate B, then that'd be fine too.
Too bad, so sad, Mayor.
Yeah, basically.
Then they fight.
Generally, everybody ends up on the same page because we all know what we're looking for.
I was wondering if she's sitting in the office doing this.
Yeah.
No,
Or that.
no thumbs up, no thumbs down.
What about this guy? It's just a face shot of him.
Yeah.
Nope, not that guy.
And fortunately, my relationship is good enough with the city manager that we've got a lot of open dialogue about it. I mean,
Okay.
I've known mayors and city managers who didn't have that, and the city manager was terrified to cross the mayor. But that's not what you want. You don't want.
Yeah.
You want.
I'm terrified to
Right,
cross the mayor.
It's just should be one big happy
Don't
family.
cross mama.
Right?
Yeah.
I've seen how she rides. Yeah. She'll kick you right off your bike. Yeah. So, okay. So, I'm truly being educated here because
same.
I thought your role. I'm not gonna say that it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever. I was under an assumption that the mayor was like the puppet master for a lot of this stuff.
Nope.
So,
Nope.
okay. So
You have a strong voice. I'm not going to say the mayor doesn't have a really strong bully pulpit
okay,
and a strong say-so, but that's not my official job.
gotcha. Yeah, especially with her because everybody knows we know she can shoot. If y'all don't know, I've watched her shoot clay. She can shoot. She can shoot.
Won the women's division of a tournament last week.
Nice. Congratulations.
I'm getting better. I'm
Right.
improving.
So don't mess with her.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, we've kind of touched on it. The good about policing that you're seeing out there. We got all these cultural classes that we're trying to get more cultural education, how to be diverse, how to police in a diverse area, things of that nature. What other good things, progressive things, paths you've seen policing going where you're working at? Like, what are all the good things you see coming down the pipeline?
I think there's a lot of good things. I think you're seeing a really strong group of officers who are compassionate and who are really compassionate and passionate about what they do. They're not that they all used to be, but the reputation used to always be that officers were just going to strong arm you.
Bunch of robots.
And
I said,
and you don't see that so much anymore. Now,
Right.
People realize our officers are human just like anybody else. I think there's a closer involvement with the community.
Right.
We've done a pretty good job of placing our police sectors out in the community, and I think most people are very comfortable talking to their officers. You clearly have some
Should be,
who are a little bit afraid, but
Yeah.
that'll change over the years, or maybe they're a little bit afraid because they should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like that you brought that up, the humanizing side, because I think, and of course I'm speaking for you on this, you're aware of, yes, our police need to be approachable and be seen as a human being, but at the same time, officer safety and getting the job done come first.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Officer and citizen safety both.
so it's a hard balance between trying to be friendly and being the nice guy and knowing that line, like, okay, Mr. Nice Guy has to stop here. I gotta switch into a different mode. And someone like you, as an officer, for me, I need you to understand that. I need you to know that, because I don't expect you to be out there with me seeing what I see. You need to trust that
I need to be able to trust that you're going to do that.
I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And the hard part for the mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong, is telling the public, like, look, I know this looks bad, but it could have been so much worse. And if he hadn't put his foot down when he did, the escalation, we could have a potential serious bodily injury or death. Even though it looked bad back here, like, we got to give him some latitude.
Yeah, and the reality of it is not whether it looks bad or doesn't. The reality of it is you have to understand how we got where we are. Oftentimes, people looking at that are only looking at after the incident,
Right.
or they're only looking at the real the real second something happens.
right.
Right.
And they're not looking at the lead up to how they got there. And that's the hardest thing for the public in today's world to understand, because we live in very much a soundbite moment, and we live in
So glad.
They only show what they want you to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that.
And I think that's the hardest message to get across. This is that we will review it. And one of the things that we've done that I'm really pleased with is start releasing body cam footage on instances immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, we argued with a couple of our prior chiefs, why do you want to hold those? Well, the DA thinks we should. I said, well, it's the same body cam today that it's going to be 6 months down the road when they decide to release it. Let's cut it off now. Let's show the whole instance early on. And you'd be shocked, or you probably wouldn't, you probably hear about them, at the number of instances that have been diffused by saying, let's put this body cam out there immediately.
Yeah. So,
And the city manager and I went tooth and nail with one of our former chiefs, and ultimately I just had, and rarely do I just really have to put my foot down, but I finally just said, you're going to release it, and you're going to do it today.
okay. And as the mayor,
And then the incident went away within 24 hours.
There you
yeah.
go.
So the argument that I could make is, are we going to taint any possible jury pool, or is releasing the body cam footage going to be inflammatory to the citizens?
You're going to taint the jury pool, whether you release it or whether you don't.
Okay.
The message is going to be written for you. So the back end, the reality of it is, do we control that messaging?
Okay.
Do we make it fair and balanced? Do we make it honest and above board? Or does the media control it and say, well, they're hiding something here, they won't release their body
Right.
cam? Now you've got all your citizens going, what was it that they were hiding?
Okay.
When they get to be a juror, then they're going back, yeah, I remember that. What was it they didn't want to let it go for?
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
The more information you can give people, generally, the better.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a big proponent of the body cams and stuff like that. And unless there is an instance where releasing the body cam footage could be somewhat detrimental, like if there's a juvenile in there, you got to take your time. You got to go blur that stuff out.
Yep.
Things of that, and that takes time. I've learned editing just on this show, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, we're not going to have something happen and an hour later have body cam out there.
Right.
You just honestly have to look and see who's involved here. And like you said, is it a juvenile, or is it, is there something else? And,
Yeah.
and we don't edit anything that isn't within the law.
Right.
Right on.
Yeah. Okay.
And rarely do we edit. Generally, those body cam footages don't have to be edited. The attorneys have the right on both sides to look at them first.
Yeah. So you got the training aspect. We got all this good training going out. That's the direction you see your police department heading. They're ahead of the transparency curve because they are getting out there. They're using social media, which is part of this show is showing that not only is social media a good tool, but it's underutilized. In my opinion, it's underutilized, and that's why I created this, because this gives us a chance to have a long-form discussion. Sure. And I tell you what, it's a breath of fresh air to hear from a mayor that we are in a soundbite community, and it's all instant gratification. Show it to me now,
Right.
and you don't have the whole story. Right. So that's common sense to me as a police officer. However, all I can do is assume, like, I hope the mayor thinks that way.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
And we're going to give it to you now, but we're going to give you the whole story.
Right. So that's great. So what else? Is there any other things that you're seeing down the pipe that you're like, I like that we're going to be doing this, or I like that police are heading in this direction?
Oh no, I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head. I mean, I think things will come up.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I've always been proud of for Fort Worth is we don't do minimal training for our officers. We are way over and above the state required and national required training.
By double, right?
Almost
Almost
double.
double,
And it
yeah.
makes a big difference. And I'm very proud of our recruitment and what
Yeah.
we do. And people are always going, oh, you got to start giving psychological tests to these candidates. Well, we do. I mean, everybody gets, if people knew what the background work on you guys
Yeah.
before you're hired,
It's
they'd
that
be
and then
shocked.
some.
So maybe this will enlighten you a little bit from my perspective. As I was an academy trainer for 3 years, the psych eval itself, okay, yeah, that weeds people in and out. The one that doesn't, that we don't have a test for, social skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could ace all of these background checks.
I've heard that from other people, and community and officers both, is that you got to figure out some better way to test social skills.
I don't know how to do that
And I think
without
it's really hard for everybody.
without coming across. And the biggest concerns you're gonna, are you being discriminative?
Yeah, I mean, the way you see things, the way I do, the way somebody in another culture may see it. That's why social skills are so hard to evaluate.
I've always said if you either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
You either have it or
Yeah.
you don't. And it's something as simple as just having a conversation with said recruit.
Yeah.
Taking them off to some room with somebody else. Hey man, what's going on? How's your day? Just see how he responds. I mean,
Yep. I think you can improve your social skills if you've got a base to start from.
Right.
And I know my social skills improved. I was always a people person, a talker, but even in law enforcement, it made me that much better. You know, it's like public speaking. You could be a great people person and you get up on the stage and you're like
freeze up.
vapor locked.
Yeah.
And or you grow past that.
Yeah.
So social skills, I agree with you. Yeah, you have them or you don't. But
You
can.
got to have, and what you can't measure is you can't measure common sense.
Right.
And you have to have officers who have some common sense,
Yeah.
who can listen and discern what is it you're really saying to me.
Right.
You may be stressed and you may be talking around the issue, but what is it? And then can ask the right questions to get at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Those are hard to interview for.
Yep.
To be able to read a room.
Yeah.
I know we've mentioned that.
Yeah. It's and that was the biggest thing that I've seen is like I'm like, I can tell you almost within 20 seconds of reading the room that like that guy's something's off. He's weird. He doesn't, or when you're training these guys, I'm like, this guy, his social skills are not. He's gonna.
Some of that comes naturally after y'all have been on the street
for a while.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So and I can't do anything about it. I can't fire that person, or I can't give a recommendation as a trainer. I can't fire anybody anyway. But
you can pull somebody that's struggling with that back in, ultimately, and put them under somebody that can help them.
Right.
Because naturally, what do? We end up taking over the call. We end up, yeah. So it's just
And
like
when those things are raised early, I mean, I've heard officers who said, "Yeah, I knew that guy was going to be a problem."
Yeah.
That's where you have to stand up and say, I know it's hard on a fellow officer, but he's a problem. Let's put him back in training, or let's put him under so-and-so. Because we've all got friends and coworkers that are the one that can fix them, or not fix them, but help them.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
That's what trainers are going to have to do. And that's what sergeants and, everybody up the chain is going to have to figure out too.
Yeah.
How do we pull somebody when we really, you got to review. One thing that I do see coming more of, the review of minor complaints that comes in, we've not, and most big departments have not done a very good job of following up on those minor complaints and say, does Eric have a series of these and are they connected to the same thing? Well, we do now. Kim's crew is beginning to review everything that comes in, match it back up and say, Officer Joe Blow's had 6 of these in the last 2 years. Maybe somebody ought to talk to him and see what's going on here.
Try to, I've said this as a leader, like you're doing them a favor now by getting ahead of it.
It's not punishment. And, you get an officer or a firefighter or one of our general employees who's got huge stress at home or maybe a family life that's fallen apart. Somebody needs to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so one other thing that I'd bring to your attention with the department that you're over, or that you work with, to me, and you've said it nationally, I think they're one of the most progressive and ahead of the curve
absolutely
departments. I would personally like to see a place like that researched by a university, and instead of other departments going, how can we be more like NYPD, LAPD, Baltimore, whatever these other departments are, I think people should be trying to be like that department.
One of the things that you have to do as mayor is tell the good stories about what's happening in your city. We had the privilege, whether you like him or hated him, but they were working on some really good policing stuff to be at the White House with President Trump, Chief Krause and I. We went over our, I just went break on the name of it, our crisis intervention team.
Okay, CIT.
Yeah, because very few departments. In fact, we had the first one. And we just expanded it, as you all know. Again, this last year's budget, we expanded it, and my hope is it'll be expanded again in this year's budget. But we had the ability to go to, at their invitation at the White House, to go to a symposium with probably 50 other mayors and 6 or 8 different police chiefs and talk about that. Those are the kind of things that you have to tell your story. You have to say, we're doing this, and here's how it's impacting us. I think the new ambassadors, or whatever we're calling them, the civilians who can take soft patrol,
The SR,
SR,
CRT, the Civilians
whatever
Response
they
Team.
are, civilian response, yes, civilian
yeah.
response team, who come out in a little softer, t-shirt and pant, not t-shirt, but collared shirt, and unmarked car, or a car that says civilian response. I think that helps in the community. And those are the kind of things you have to get out and say, this is what we're doing, because it's not only to sell it to other people, but your citizens need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they don't. And when they will suddenly wake up when they see it on the national news.
Right.
I mean, and Krause and I got cited on a national news story talking about the crisis response team.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's part of my point is it's great to get those mayors aware, because that's one, there's a chiefs meeting. I know they have like this chiefs council for police chiefs, and the chiefs will share their stuff out there. But you're talking, I don't know how long necessarily that you get to really go in depth about what you're doing and what the results are. My angle is more, you have a university that's going to publish it, and now it's out there. That's out there permanently. And you've got quantitative and qualitative data showing.
And they do some research on it. Tarleton's done some research and some documentation on it. UTA has done some work on a couple of our different programs.
Yeah, because
it's just that most of us on the average level don't see that.
Yeah.
It gets documented and researched, and then it gets generally incorporated into training programs.
Gotcha.
And setups. And that's where the university work. It isn't that it's going to be a big splash nationally,
Yeah.
unless it's some real earth-shaking report.
Yeah.
But just general day-to-day operations that kind of improve your citizen response gets put into that research and then gets shared at major chiefs or mayors or conferences.
Because I can
or
tell
whatever, and it comes back and comes into training.
Yeah, I can tell you as somebody that came from another department outside the state, I'd never heard of a CCPD type program. And why that's not national, why not all major departments aren't trying to do that, blows my mind. Because in my opinion, I can't think of a better way to, one, see the climate of how your citizens think your police are doing, because they have to vote for it. And for anybody that hasn't heard this before, the CCPD fund is basically the citizens, they vote every, let's say, 4 or 5 years.
Every 5 years. And now it's every 10 years.
Yeah, so they vote, and they're basically saying, we like what our police are doing. We're going to give them a half-cent
sales tax.
Sales tax on the dollar. And that all goes towards the police. So
a little bit of the correction on that. That goes to police and community education that impacts policing.
okay.
Very nice.
Like boys and girls clubs where they try to bring kids up that would reduce anything that can reduce crime.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of it goes direct to police needs that are aimed at reducing crime. A lot of it goes into community response that's aimed at helping kids and young folks and families.
Which is smart, because you're cutting the problems off before they get started.
That's the goal.
Yeah. through my studies, that has lowered recidivism immensely. At least the studies have shown that when you start incorporating helping parents learn how to parent, because you've got generations of parents that
Don't know how to parent.
They don't know how to parent. And I'm not
That whole
saying
kids
that
raising kids kind of.
yes, kids raising kids. I'm not saying that we're going out and like, you're a bad parent and you need to learn how. No, it's just they didn't have it. So
They didn't see it modeled.
right,
Right.
exactly. So
But the fundamental bottom line, for most of our issues that y'all deal with is a lack of education.
yes,
They just don't. The nation as a whole, and for Texas particularly in the big cities, seemed to drop off probably 30 years ago on our focus on education. We have far too many young folks in the community who don't have an adequate education.
yeah,
And without that, you're not going to hold a decent job, and then
Yeah.
you get right back into crime and drugs, and
yeah. It's a vicious loop.
it is.
And so the CCPD thing going across, and like I said, if that just won that one program, we used to have things called I can't remember what we'd call it. You'd vote. You need new patrol cars, so you'd reach out to the citizens
Not
and
a
like,
bond election.
yeah, you'd
Yeah.
ask them, hey, will you buy these cars for us? And where I was at was not a very police friendly area. They'd get voted down. We had patrol cars that had 500, 600,000 miles on them. Like, you couldn't even sit them next to each other and idle, like after a call.
Right.
Or
That's partly where CCPD came in. I mean,
yeah,
25 years ago, Fort Worth had a fleet that was really aging, and half our fleet looked like somebody had taken a ball-peen hammer to it because it'd been through a couple of really bad hailstorms.
Yeah.
And they were still driving them. And you can't go. People want you to go for bonds or for a vote on every penny you spend. You can't do that. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
a millage. That's what we called it.
A millage.
Yep.
And the sales tax piece is just a tool that everybody pays. And it isn't just residents, it's visitors who are here and everybody.
Yeah.
That's why it is so valuable, because it's not like property tax where you
Yeah.
live here and you got to be a property owner. It's every time you go out somewhere, you're going to pay a little bit of sales tax. And if you've got people like you do right now from out of state, every
Yep.
time they're buying something, we're getting that sales tax.
Yeah. And it's a good thermometer.
It's a real good thermometer.
It
and when you
shows you.
pass that election, it shows you what people are thinking about policing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it passes,
And it's
51%.
Really
Yeah.
in the climate we've been in for 2 years, that we were able to pass that sales tax a year and a half ago, and not just pass it for 5 years, but to extend it for 10 years. When everybody, if you listen to the national rhetoric, they were saying, "Oh, we want to defund the police and yada yada yada." Well, Fort Worth residents said, "No, we don't. We want to."
People were I was so worried that it wasn't going to get passed, and I'm like, guys, I said, if anything, they just woke a sleeping dragon, and
Yep.
Yeah. You got to
So-
support, if your guys are doing well,
You got to support them.
you got to support them. So, yeah, I agree with that. Okay. So, perception versus reality. We're kind of on that topic. You got the perception that policing's bad nationwide. Now, you've already said that you're independent from the police. You don't answer to the police. Police don't answer to you. There's a separation. Perception nationwide, at least the media would have you think that policing is bad right now. It's in a bad place. But the reality for what is Fort Worth, like the 13th largest, 12th largest city in the nation? And you, who's led them for how many years? 10 years? Saying they not only are they nailing it, they've been nailing it the last 10 years, and maybe before you even got in. I think.
Oh, they were definitely before. I've been here all my life. Our police have always been there.
So
There are pockets in the community that we don't have the connections that we should, but we're working on that.
yeah, so
But even there, the bulk of the people in those communities still support the police.
yeah, so it's kind of odd to me that you've got this one island of a major city that's surrounded by two other major cities at least. You got Dallas and you got Austin. Dallas, in my opinion, from what I've seen, they don't have that same reality.
No, Dallas really doesn't, and Dallas it's an enigma in their relationships with their police. Dallas is more of I've got family in Dallas, and there's great things happening in Dallas, but Dallas is really a big city anywhere USA. It's and Fort Worth is a big city with character.
Okay.
We still have that attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is interesting in Dallas. I mean, their crime rate is much higher and their relations are not good. And that's, I don't know. I can't analyze Dallas because I'm not on the inside on Dallas. But what is it? Is it the fact that they have had, somebody said it's because they've turned their police chiefs over. I said, no, that's not the case. We've had 4 chiefs in my 10-year run.
Yeah. And it's weird because we're sitting here talking about how we can improve policing.
But I don't know that Dallas's council as a whole supports their police.
Okay.
And that makes a difference too, because now you've got people that are in charge talking about it. Maybe they do, but that's not the perception.
Okay. So we're trying to improve it nationwide through this one show that I have. We're gonna improve policing nationwide.
Put a dent in it.
Yeah, we're gonna put a big dent in it. But we've got a sister city that's just around the corner, and I would say perception-wise, at least, you got 2 polar opposites when it comes to policing and the perception of their police.
It's the perception, yeah.
So that shows you the battle that we're going to have if we can't get the 2 cities next to each other, 2 major cities next to each other on the same path. How are we going to do it within the county, within the state?
It's a process. I mean, and it's a step at a time process. I think some cities do it really well, and people begin to look at those cities and how are they doing it and begin to style themselves after them. We didn't get in this shape overnight. We won't get out of it overnight.
Yeah.
And, my goal is not to fix these cities that are in terrible shape with their police. My goal is to make us the best we can be, and to shine a light on that, and then people start saying, okay, let's look at what Fort Worth's doing.
Yeah. I hope,
and why.
Hope more people do, because they're doing it right.
You probably know this, but I graduated from Northside High School. I grew up in this city, and I've never felt like this police department was bad or felt, so it's just,
It's just it's just this lack of respect is a national issue, and it's not just police. I mean, this started years ago with the military. I mean, you're former military.
Yes, ma'am.
This goes way back. We had a cycle where people weren't particularly respectful of our military people either.
Right. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate.
That's changed. I can tell you with my military time, I've never felt underappreciated. Never felt underappreciated here in Texas.
And you won't.
And I don't see that changing. Just like people say there's bad apples with police, there's people that have had bad interactions or just don't like police in general because of what they represent, and they're going to treat you like bad. They're going to treat you bad no matter what, and I don't let those outliers affect me.
And I do think, and I'm a little bit on the outside on this, but we have too many politicians who are listening to the small group of squeaky wheels. And, if we listen to the ones who came to council and told us how bad y'all are, policies would be totally different. But instead, if you're not serving behind a desk, if you're out in the community and listening to people and talking to community, then you begin to hear the real story.
Yeah.
And then you hear from hundreds of people that my interaction was good. Could it have been better? Sure, anybody's interactions could be better, but it's good. And you got to weigh those out. You got to listen to the squeaky wheels, but they can't control your policy when you've got 20 people screaming and yelling at you, but you've got 900,000 people who are largely saying we're very happy.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. How does a person who lives in a city of a major city like Fort Worth, how do they make a complaint to the mayor?
They can call my office. They can email me.
Okay, so
they can text me. They can do it on social media.
What's the right way?
You can't find me, then you're not looking.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the right way, and how does that process work? If I'm mad because there's potholes down Main Street, I'm just giving an example, and I want to make a complaint to the mayor. What's the right way, and what's the process of that getting to you?
Formal way, can't say that word today, is to get on the website, fill out a contact for the mayor, make a statement about what you want, and then somebody will call you back. Either I will or somebody from my operation. But that's a tenth of what we do. I mean, the book of come through people calling the office, leaving me a message or leaving staff a message, people posting Facebook messages, sending Instagram posts, calling their, neighborhood NPO and telling them. And, there's an awful lot of NPOs who'll just pick the phone up and call me and say, hey, Mayor, you're going to hear from this citizen, and let me give you what really happened, whether it's their side of the story or the officer's side. You need both, because sometimes when somebody, not just police, but whether it's a pothole in the street, I've got to go find out how long that pothole's really been there, and was it filled, or have they been notified before? Take, for instance, we had some folks recently who were raising Cain about the street lights in their neighborhood being out. They were at council, and then they came to my office to see me, and I finally said, so who's reported this? And they said, well, I don't know. Y'all should know they're out. I said, no, we can't know your street lights are out.
Right.
It's up to you to report it. You don't want to pay the kind of taxes it would take to have a fleet of repair people combing 354 square miles.
Right. And what's our
and they really didn't realize that somebody has to call. And potholes are kind of the same thing. Yeah, we've got road crews who are combing the roads, but they may do TCU, and they may do stop 6, and then they may do stop 6, and they may not get back to TCU or Wedgwood or Far North for 6 months. And
yeah.
my gosh, with these rains, potholes pop up pretty quick.
I can usually quell that with the Fort Worth app. If you have the Fort Worth
app, you can do almost anything.
I never hear a word back from somebody that complains.
That's really one of the strongest tools we have is my Fort Worth app.
So what does that app do?
So as she just explained, it's if you have issues with, let's use my school, for example, the speed zone lights. They're on for, let's say, 7:30 to 8:30. Well, we've had complaints that they're on from 7:30 to 9:30. And I'm just like, hey, jump on. I've used my Fort Worth app. Hey, I'm an officer. Put in my complaint. Fixed within 24 to 48 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. And so it's
the same thing with potholes. You can take a picture of that pothole and the location and send it, and you'll get a response back from TPW that says, thank you for notifying us. Someone will look at it, and you will get a notification back that says when it's going to be fixed. And
so is there a checks and balances for somebody, like I throw that complaint out there, I take the picture, and nothing ever happens? Then I send up a complaint like, hey, I complained about this. Is anybody checking to make sure these complaints and whatnot are?
If they're coming to my office, they are.
Okay.
Everything that comes through my office gets a response.
Okay.
Now, there are people who say it doesn't, and generally we can't find their complaint.
Okay.
So
I get
my Fort Worth app.
I'll go to, in my Fort Worth app, there are people monitoring it, and it's the cool thing about it is it doesn't have to go through central monitoring it now. If you mention water, it'll go direct
straight to the source.
Direct to streets.
So that's got to help out police immensely because that's one less complaint that's going to them that isn't something that's in their realm anyway. It's like when we get animal calls, I'm like, what do you want me to do with your snake?
It has everything in there. Yard, pets, streets. And I've yet to hear somebody come back to my school and be like, hey man, that thing didn't work. So anybody, and it's fast
and
too.
Ultimately, it'll have a geotag on it. And you can take a picture of it, and it'll know exactly where you took the picture, and that's cool.
I actually took a picture of the streetlights.
Okay.
Put in the address.
It's there on certain things right now. But ultimately, you won't have to add the address. It'll just know where you took it.
So you're sassy. I know you're sassy. What's the
Not
wrong
me.
way? What's the wrong way to come at the mayor? What's the wrong way to come at the mayor?
Well, there's probably really no wrong way. I mean, people come and they're screaming and yelling, and you got to get them calmed down before you can find out what they want.
Okay.
The real wrong way is to come and assume that just because you want it done, it's going to be done tomorrow, or because you've got an idea, we're going to implement it immediately. We get thousands of things, and we do implement an awful lot of them, but we have to weigh out, and they have to understand the process, and that's sometimes hard for people.
Okay.
just don't come in and don't come in just with a complaint. Come in with some suggestions.
Suggest
Yeah.
solutions.
Bring a solution.
Good night.
Yep. Yep. So what's the estimated? So people understand. You said you're getting thousands and thousands. What's the estimated population of your city?
U.S. Census Bureau has not released the most recent census, but they've released their preliminary findings, and we're just a little shy of 930 million.
930,000.
Yeah, almost. Yeah,
Almost
when I
a
say
million.
million.
Yeah.
Almost a million. Sorry, 930,000.
Okay.
Wow.
In Fort Worth was, let's see, 2010 census took place right before I was sworn in. But when I was sworn in, we were number 17 in size, and just shortly thereafter they released the data that moved us 16th.
Yeah.
But in the 10 years I've been here, we've moved essentially from 17th to 12th.
I want to thank the Californians for that.
Californians,
Yeah.
Colorados,
Everybody.
Okay.
Michigan.
Michigan.
For moving down to Texas.
Yep.
As fast as they could.
Yeah.
Don't come to Texas if you want to make us California or New York.
Yeah.
That's not who we are.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Remember why you
Let's
came
say
here.
don't California my Texas.
And remember why you left.
Come,
Yeah.
but remember why you left and
Yeah.
remember why you came.
That's right. Okay. So we talked about perception and reality. Your direction, where you were trying to, obviously the debt and all that stuff was a big spot for you. I want to talk about self-awareness. Okay. You're the mayor. You got to know that you have like blind spots or disconnects from certain aspects of the city. How do you deal with that? How do you recognize yourself like, okay, maybe this isn't my wheelhouse?
Well, for 10 years, public engagement citizen engagement was one of my campaign promises. And we've done that with Steer Fort Worth, our young leaders group that's very strong now. In fact, we have one of our new council members was one of my first classes at Steer Fort Worth, and we have 3 people running that were in Steer Fort Worth through the years. The bike rides that we've done all over the community, the walking town halls, the coffee with the mayor, those are all about engagement. Social media is all about engagement. I mean, we have a big Instagram. I'm actually technically now an influencer on Instagram.
Yeah.
How about that?
There you
like
go.
that.
I like
And
it.
Facebook. I just think, but as far as awareness goes, yeah, clearly you know that there are people in certain communities who think you don't connect with them, don't relate to them at all.
Yeah.
I'd like to think we do. I mean, I think we may not have a lot in common, but if we can listen to each other. Don't just tell me you don't know anything about me. I mean, I've had people just say things to me going, well, you don't know anything about me because you're rich and white and educated and privileged and you grew up in privilege. And I'm going, you don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
You don't know how I grew up.
Goes both ways.
You don't know why, I came home and finished up at UTA because my dad's business fell apart and he had 3 kids in college, and I worked my way through school.
Yeah.
And people just assume I've been delivered on a silver platter, and that's not true. I grew up in just an average home in Arlington Heights. We certainly were not on the wealthy side. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a nice living, and my parents made us think we never wanted for anything, but we did.
I would assume with your accent that you rode horses at some point.
Absolutely.
What accent?
Because he doesn't have it. What accent?
Yeah.
That's the funniest thing, because when I was in college, I was president of my sorority, and I guess I had always been in Texas and traveled a little as a kid, but nothing much. We went to California one time, but mostly we vacationed here because there were 4 kids, and my dad was working, my mother took care of us, and but I went to speak at a national convention the year I was president. And afterwards, they had a reception for the speakers. And the first girl in line said, oh, I knew where you were from the minute you opened your mouth.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And she said, you have a very thick Texas accent. And I had never realized I had a Texas accent.
Oh, yeah.
I hear it all the time, and I'm just like, hey, what accent? That's my Mexican accent? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But no,
I
they're
just-
for that.
And somebody said, you going to work on that? I said, no, I'm proud of my Texas heritage. I'm
This
not
is
getting
how
rid
I
of it.
talk.
Yeah.
It's how
Yes,
I
I know.
talk.
Oh, man. I get it all the time just from certain words. I say pop and milk and whatever it is, but my wife got it yesterday. We went out to Heim, took my military buddy that you met, and we're in line, and he looks right at my wife. Where are you from? She's like, Michigan? I knew it. Not from here. Yeah.
It's not good or bad. It's just who we all are. Think
yeah.
how boring it'd be if we all sounded just alike and looked alike.
Bunch of robots.
I know.
Monotone.
I'm just jealous because I don't have it. Like, I want that Matthew McConaughey. You know?
I'm getting there.
That dude's voice is smooth.
He does have smooth voice.
From what I hear, he may be a governor one day.
Might.
Who knows?
The rumor is he'll run.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll see how far he makes it.
Yeah.
But okay, Mayor. We got. I like your approach to handling the blind spots, and I was gonna ask you, have you had people come at you, you know, in those types of meetings? So obviously they have.
Oh yeah.
And that's
and somebody said, one of my newer council members several years ago said, "Well, Mayor, you're just the bigwig," and I said, "No, I just happen to be the one everybody knows." And they said, "Well, I don't think we ought to do this or that." I kind of forgot the details on it. And I said, "Well, just wait. When they all come to council tonight, it won't be you they're yelling at.
right.
It's the mayor, whether it's me or whoever's in that center chair. That's the name they know and the face they know."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they were complaining about me having a detail. That's what it was.
Having your police detail.
Yeah. And I said, "Then you just need to ride with us one day and see." I mean, people know you, and with social media and TV, they just, they know you everywhere you go.
Yep.
And you do get a lot of threats, but it's just what you do.
Yep.
It doesn't worry me.
That's what I preach to the kids.
I don't have my guys when I'm not working. I mean, they're just during work hours.
But it's smart. Okay, so in a major city like we're in, I think it's smart. One, you should have a detail, and two, it's nice to know you have officers that are trained in that type of work. That if the president shows up here, if the some premier down from Mexico decides to visit, they can do that job, and they could take a guy like me and like, "Hey man, like this is what we want you to do. We've been doing this a long time. So just do this. You'll be fine. If you got any questions, ask us." So you've got somebody to bounce that off of instead of taking an officer who's never worked around, maybe they'll get starstruck being around Betsy. I don't know. Or they don't know what to say, or even worse, they say too much. And, because of fine balance.
Just security. I mean, it's about getting through crowds and getting places. I mean, we were at an event the other night, and I was going to speak, and there were several hundred people there, and they all want to talk to the mayor. They all want a picture with the mayor, especially now that I'm, getting ready to retire. And finally, the guys just had to say, "Listen, you guys, we got to get the mayor out of here."
Yeah.
And I can't necessarily say that. The mayor can't. I couldn't say to you, I can't take a picture with you. I'm sorry, I have to leave. They just take a front at it.
Yeah.
If it's just me.
Yeah. I tell my wife that all the time. Give me the phone. I'll be the bad guy. Like, like if she, and I'm actually lying. It's the other way around. I have such a hard time telling people no on the phone. I'm like, maybe I do need extended car insurance. And my wife's like, "Give me that."
My staff says I don't know how to spell no. For 10 years, they say I don't know how to spell no. Several years ago, they had me a little round button set on my desk that said,
No.
You punched it, it said no. And then you punched it again, it said, "What part of that didn't you get?" And then you punched it again, it said, "Hell no." And they would bring me stuff, and I'd say, "Okay, let's do it." And they'd go, "Hit that button."
It's like, maybe I don't need mustard on my fries.
Right.
I just eat it dry.
Okay. So you like where your police are going. You like to. How are cops doing overall, in your opinion? How are cops doing?
In Fort Worth?
No, just in general. From what you've seen, you travel a lot.
Yeah.
You have to for your job. Yeah. How are they doing? How do you see it? What's your perception of policing just all over?
My perception is that it's very good.
So
I mean, it really is, and I think the average person's perception is that it's very good. I think this looting and shooting and all that's going on, clearly there's room for improvement. There's room for improvement everywhere.
Yeah.
We're human. We're never perfect.
Right.
And there are clearly cities where policing has not been what it should be. But as a whole, I think the nation's police force is very good.
Okay. So I guess the message is just always strive to improve. I think.
Strive to improve and get to know each other. I mean, you're not going to be much good policing in where your community if you don't know the people on your beat or on your street.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be much good as mayor if I don't know my citizens.
Right.
Right.
It's the same thing. The only difference is your contact can be lethal and mine kill them, might scar them. It just didn't kill them.
Scar him with sassiness.
Yes,
Right?
sassiness. Yeah.
Yep. And the worst thing you could hear from her is "Bless your heart."
I'd be like,
I think she just told me go F off. I'm not sure.
Texas accent.
Yeah, her Texas accent, but she was so nice about it.
Yeah.
But
That's the old Texas slang term.
it is.
Bless their heart.
Okay, Mayor. What's next for you? You're retiring. Oh, for people that don't know,
Fun stuff.
I'm sorry, people don't know. After 10 years, she decided she's not going to run anymore, and she's retiring from being a mayor. But are you retiring? I can't see you settling down and doing nothing.
Oh, I'm not one to do nothing. I mean, I say I'm taking 6 months off and ride my bike and play with my grandkids. And my husband says, "Yeah, you'll last about 6 weeks."
Yeah.
And he's
6
known
days.
me for 49 years. So
Okay.
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm looking fairly seriously. The county judge is probably not going to run again. I'm looking at county judge.
Nice.
Being a judge, that is awesome.
It's not the judicial judge; it's the administrative judge who runs the county.
Okay. All right. Well, does anybody else know that?
A few people.
Okay. I was going to
It'll
say,
be
if they don't, they will
They
now.
will now. Yeah.
All
You've heard
150
it here
followers.
first.
Yeah. We don't have the biggest following yet, but
You'll
it's
build it.
It's getting bigger. Okay. So grandkids,
I got to ride that bike a little more.
yeah.
COVID. I mean, COVID. I got the COVID 15 for sure.
Yeah.
Slowing down my riding.
There you go.
Okay.
The mayor's try is next, so I got the mayor's.
That's
try.
on the 13th, correct? I'll be working that.
Oh, good.
So I'll
Okay.
see you. I'll see you out there.
Nice. Well, Mayor, I don't have a whole lot more now. I just wanted to get. This is rare. We don't get to see your side of the house and how that involves police work, FD, our nurses. COVID, as you talked about, that affects our teachers. And we touched on education.
Frontline workers. That's just yeah.
For the community, and I
It's
think
been a nightmare for them.
Yeah, I think our teachers, like you said, directly, people are like, why do you always bring up teachers? Because they have a direct influence on how crime happens.
Yep.
If they can reach one kid before bad things start to happen, then they've helped us out. They've helped out the city. So that's
why education is the backbone of everything we touch.
right.
10 years ago, I said I was going to help tackle education or the lack thereof, and people said, "Yeah, you're making a mistake. The mayor's doesn't have to be involved in that." I said, "We do. Indirectly, it touches crime, it's poverty, it's homelessness, it's workforce development, and it certainly is economic development, job recruitment."
I like the
and
why
I've done
not,
it for
yeah.
10 years, and they kept putting me back in office, so clearly it didn't bother them.
Right. I have one idea that I want to bring up for you, and you tell me what you think of this idea. Okay, so homelessness, you just talked about that. There's a problem in policing where you get a complaint on a homeless person on a corner begging. Okay. Now the debate is like, do you give the person that gives them money a ticket? Do you give that homeless guy a ticket? I don't really think either one of those is the right answer. Because one, I don't want you to tell me what to do with my money.
That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? If I want to give you money, I'm gonna give you money, and you're not gonna tell me any different. And the same for the homeless person. Even if they're fake, even if they're not a real homeless person and they're out there begging. I had the idea of those QR codes. You put a sign out at all the problem corners. It's just a QR code. Then that money goes directly to our homeless funds. I don't
We're a
know.
leg up on you. And
Okay.
I can't believe you don't have any in your pocket. There's
There
a
you
whole
go.
stack of cards that have those on there. It says donate here
Right.
when you feel the urge to give.
Right,
It
okay.
goes to help homelessness.
Nice.
But instead of cards, you have a actual fixed sign. So when I'm driving by in my
You
car,
can click it.
I just click it.
That's not a bad idea.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then that way those people that are a problem on that corner, now they don't have an excuse. Like, look, this is your outlet. This is where this money's going. It's going to help you. You need to reach out and go to our liaison spots instead of trying to come out here and shortcut the system.
Yeah, it's just really hard because people just are passionate.
Right,
And they're
right.
become passionate about.
Right.
You
And
know,
I
they
think-
want to do something right then.
But I think that's something you can.
But that's not a bad idea at
I
all.
know. I see. Yeah, every once in a while I get good
you
ideas.
go.
I believe you get them all the time.
So
My foot worth out, dude. Just put it in there. Thank you.
there you go. So, yeah, Mayor, I'm very thankful you came out
Yes,
and
very
did
much.
this.
Thank y'all for
Learned
having
so
me.
much.
Yeah, we're growing. I can't believe how many people I've had reaching out to get on the episode. I recorded an episode last night. We recorded this one. I have another one tomorrow.
Sweet.
And then I got another one within the week. Now, here's a problem that I ran across. While recording, I ran out of space. I'm recording with a phone, an iPad, and then on my computer. Computer's great. I love that. The iPad is not too bad because it's got more storage, but the phone is killing me. I'm digging for sponsors. This is me. I'm gotten past my shyness of asking for sponsors. If anybody likes what we're doing, likes the direction we're going, trying to bridge this gap, reach out to us. We have our web pages. We're on Spotify. We're on Facebook. We're on all these
Our
different
own
spots.
personal space.
Yeah.
Pages.
Please reach out to us. We're looking for any help we can get. We're not trying to make money. That's the last thing I want people to know.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make money. We're just trying to support the show and keep it going. So, Mayor,
Sure.
I really appreciate you coming out. You got any parting words of wisdom for us?
Let's keep doing what you're doing.
You like it?
Yeah.
It's pretty fun,
It's
isn't it?
great. It's fun. I love podcasts.
Awesome.
I think they're great fun.
It's great. So when we get done, I'll give you the link. I'll get you all set
Okay.
up and show you what we got. Then you can share it because you got a lot of
Share it.
followers.
I
There you
got a
go.
lot of followers. She
There you go. The influencer.
Yeah, right? She is an
Love it.
influencer. So, all right. With that said, we're going to play our outro music here. And
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I learned
it's
so
fun.
much. It's awesome. Yeah.
In an ideal world, if you could talk to everybody, it'd be a lot better off because they'd understand each
Yeah.
other more.